All right, welcome to today's stream. This is going to be hopefully a pretty quick stream. I just want to give a little bit of thoughts about this build that I just made, which is a Pyrotechnic Control Poison Controller. Pyrotechnic Control is the new set in Homecoming that came out recently. And I do have a little bit to say, not about the Pyrotechnic Control actually so much, but mostly about poison, but obviously both of them will be a little bit intertwined. So poison is I think it's one of the most interesting secondary sets there is in City of Heroes, or just set in general, I guess. It's great on a defender too as a primary. The reason why is it is just very different from the other sets. So there's a lot of different ways to build it. And that's kind of what I want to highlight today, is just some of the different ways you might want to build your poison, because I feel like poison is one of the very few sets in the game that you can't just like hand a build, or just like take a build and be like, oh, this is just going to work for everyone, because there's just so many different ways you can build it, and it really is just, salt to taste. You got to, figure out what you want out of poison. And I do have quite a lot of experience. I have experience with a poison controller, poison defender. I don't think I've done a corruptor. What other set can get poison? Done it on a mastermind. So that's pretty much everything except for a corruptor. It would be fine on a corruptor too, though. Just haven't done it. So poison is a fantastic set. It is pretty much the best debuff set in the game for the most part, for just like standard debuffs. So I'm talking about defense debuff, resistance debuff, and to hit debuff, and it even has secondary debuff, strength debuff, damage debuff, I think I already said. So it is, and it stacks it like pretty crazy. So the main debuff powers that you get are Envenom, Weaken, and Venomous Gas. So it is a pretty active debuff set. So if you compared it to something like Radiation has pretty much the same debuffs almost. So the main thing being the to hit, the defense, the strength, to damage, and the damage debuff. So on Radiation, you put up these toggles, you set it and forget it. Once the toggles are up, the mob remains debuffed as long as, your toggles do in fact stay up. Versus Poison is more active. You basically have these two abilities which are not toggles. You have to basically keep them up on your opponent. And the way that they work is they are AoE, but they affect the target that you are targeting more than the mobs around. So, for example, if you look in the numbers, see how there's like a discrepancy where it's like, oh, it says negative 30%, resistance debuff, and then it also says negative 15% resistance debuff. So what that's saying is, on the target that you use the ability on, it's doing 30% minus resistance. On all the surrounding mobs, it's only 15% resistance. So what that means is poison is really like a boss killer. The way that you want to play it is you want to target the boss in each mob, and you want to use Weaken and Envenom on that boss. If the mobs are dying quickly, by the time you get up to the next mob, you'll already have these off cooldown. They have pretty short cooldown when you're at level 50. If you're killing the mob slowly, you want to then, after they're off cooldown, you want to find the next boss in the mob that you didn't hit these on, and use these on that boss. So it's really helpful to have your... this is actually the reason why I got into turning on the nameplates, so that you can see the names of all the enemies in the game. Because you're going to need to target bosses very quickly with this build. Basically, the quicker, as a poison player, the quicker you can target bosses and mobs, the better off and the easier it's going to be for you. Because that is your whole... It doesn't matter what you're doing. Poison is so powerful. If it's Pyrotechnic or if it's on a defender, your number one priority is these two abilities, Envenom and Weaken. You want to use them on bosses as quickly as possible. And you do have to, you don't want to spam them. They last for 30 seconds, which is a pretty long time. Most mobs will not survive 30 seconds. So you don't want to just keep like applying them. They don't stack at all. You just need to use it every 30 seconds. The only reason you're going to use them on cooldown is if mobs are dying quickly, or if there's a lot of bosses you have to tag. But if you're fighting an AV, for example, only every 30 seconds do you have to use these two abilities, unless they miss. So it is important that you somewhat track if the ability misses, because if these debuffs are not up, it's kind of a poison is not really doing much. It's a pretty big misplay if you're not keeping up in Venom and Weaken. That is, in my opinion, that is the number one priority for this build, or pretty much any build that uses poison. Okay, so then the other debuff power is Venomous Gas, which is a toggle around you that is just insanely powerful. I mean, it has crazy debuff numbers here, but this just means that you want to be, in the sauce right next to all the enemies so that you're getting the use out of this toggle, because it has huge debuff in this, which is also why in this build that I paired it with Pyrotechnic, because the cool thing about Pyrotechnic is I think it's one of the few sets. I think Ice is the other one. I don't know if any of the other ones have a AoE toggle debuff power. So it's the exact same thing. It means you want to stay near the mobs for this to work. So it's stacking even more to hit and defense debuff, as well as the resistance debuff. But this is only if you have Blast Off, it seems. So yeah, if you are standing next to the mobs and you have used in Weaken, so you've used in Venom and Weaken, and you're standing next to the mobs, they shouldn't be able to hit you. So it's kind of like an active survivability for this build. You can't just stay at a distance and do nothing. You'll probably get killed, because the build that I have, and just poison in general, you don't get a lot of protection. So it's very active, but if you're pushing buttons and you're playing right, you should be pretty solid and not easily killed, which is nice, because poison is generally pretty squishy. But it's really nice that it's paired with a controller set, because then you also have CC to keep yourself alive. Okay, so let's finish going through the poison powers before we go to Pyrotechnic. A lot of these powers are optional. So for example, the heal is pretty bad. It's not that good of a heal. If you're fighting enemies with toxic damage, it's pretty crazy, but that's, pretty rare. The heal itself is just not great. 203, a single target, pretty average activation, recharge time, pretty big endurance cost. A lot of people skip this heal. However, the way that I see it is poison is such a team player. It's, you're doing all these debuffs that you're not getting the use of your debuffs if there aren't people on your team who are, doing damage. So I find that it's really important that you want people to stay alive. So I personally actually like to take the heal, even though it's not that good. But that is not required by any means for poison, for you to take this heal. It is in my build, and I do have it 6 slotted, so I try to push it to as much of its potential as possible, which isn't a lot. But I am kind of a pocket healer when I play poison, and I do like to throw out a lot of heals if the team needs it. But that's an optional ability right there. Then we get to Neurotoxic Breath. This is another optional ability. I'd say most builds, even more than the heal, wouldn't take it. It is crazy powerful. It is one of the most powerful slows in the game. And I actually learned that from AE, because if you put this on AE mobs and they hit you with Neurotoxic Breath, you'll learn it's like even more powerful than a council sniper with ice on it. This slows down enemies to a crawl, but slow is not always the most important CC, especially in team play where things just die so quickly. It doesn't really do much, and since you're a controller, you have hard CC, so there's not really too much of a reason to slow them down. However, the reason that I took it in my build, and I will occasionally take in builds, is it also does have a little hold component to it. And let's see if it says, yeah, affected foes may choke on the gas as their movement and attack rate are severely reduced. It does have a little hold component. It is a little AoE hold. It has a, low chance, only 25%. You get 2 of them though, for a 2 magnitude hold. It's kind of like a little pseudo AoE hold, but it also has the little slow CC built in. So I wouldn't recommend taking this on most builds, but since the build that I'm doing, the whole point of it is to actually stack holds, and this is another hold ability, I did take it. And that's the thing about poison, is you have 3 hold abilities that you can take in poison. You have this one, neurotoxic breath. You have paralactic poison, which is just a single target hold. It does a little bit below average amount of time that the hold lasts, to kind of, which is, I think, pretty balanced, because this is a secondary set. So if it was as strong as your controller hold, that'd be pretty crazy. But you can see this is only about 15 seconds, whereas our regular controller hold is 22 seconds. So a little bit shorter, but you can stack them, which is cool. And then the last hold that you get is Poison Trap, which is an AoE hold you put down on the ground. It's a little trap. When somebody walks over it, or if you just, put it on top of somebody, it explodes immediately. And it does an AoE hold. So, yeah. Neurotoxic Breath, going back in order here, not essential for every build. Most builds probably won't take it. Elixir of Life is pretty much essential. It's just really nice to have an ally res, because again, you're a team player as poison. You want your teammates to be alive and doing things, so you pretty much always take Elixir of Life. Antidote is another one you don't have to take. It is an amazing power, but if you don't want to have to, it's a lot of management to keep this up. This is basically an ability, if you were playing poison perfectly, I mean, I really enjoy doing this, but it's not for everybody. You'd want to have Antidote up on every class that doesn't have CC protection. So it's, if you're on a team with a Blaster, or a Controller, or a Corruptor, or a Defender, a Dominator, Mastermind, maybe even sometimes a Peacebringer Warshade, you want to put, you want to put this ability up on them, Antidote. Let's go back to Pyrotechnic. So that is a lot of things to manage, because it only lasts for 1 minute and 30 seconds. You can only put it up on one target at a time. If you do, though, if you can keep this up on them, it is a huge boost to your party. They have full CC protection to everything except for knockdown. Yeah, no knockdown protection, but stun and hold protection, like on a Blaster, for example, it saves lives. It's really amazing. You can stack it, and you do get a little bit of resistance as well with Toxic and Cold. The recharge resistance, the run speed resistance, it's pretty significant. It just means that those ATs are not going to be slowed down or CC'd, which is pretty huge. Really good for team. Other than that, unless you're managing, you're keeping it up, constantly making sure that those ATs have Antidote up, which is a lot to keep track of. Even if you don't use it for that, it's still not the worst ability to take, just in case, maybe, what's a great way to use it is if a teammate uses like a Wakey, you can, they get up and they're stunned, you can break them out of the stun with Antidote. There's some, or if you just happen to see somebody on your team is CC'd, you can just use it on them to break them out. You can use it like reactionary instead of, keeping it 100% uptime on the party. And even other than that, the other reason that this is not the worst ability to take is it is just a free resistance enhancement that you can put in it, right? It takes resist. So I put a Gladiator's Armor in there, which is really nice. So that's the other reason it's not too bad to take. It's not required to take by any means, but I really like to have it in my poison builds because, again, I'm all about support with poison. I think it's the way to play it. Paralactic Poison, this is another one that is completely optional. Because it isn't the strongest hold of all time, sometimes you just won't want to take it. It also has a pretty slow recharge time. Most builds probably won't. But again, this particular build that I'm making is all about stacking holds. So the way that it would work is you would use like Dazzle, like let's say this is, okay, so the full rotation would be something like you target the boss in the mob, you use Envenom, you use Weaken, you use Dazzle, and then you use Paralactic Poison. So if you, well, as a controller, you have the, what is it? It's Overpower. Is that right? Doesn't say. Oh, wait, I should be able to see here. Overpower, yeah. So you have a chance to get an Overpower proc as a controller. It's a 1 in 3 chance. If Overpower procs, you will hold a boss outright. If Overpower doesn't proc, one use of Dazzle will not hold the boss. So that's why you want to stack Dazzle and Paralactic Poison. Having access to 2 single target holds like this means that you can hold any boss. Just, you know, immediately CC them because you just do Dazzle into Paralactic Poison, which is really nice. The other thing you can do is you can spread them out, like on lieutenants, you know, use a Dazzle on one lieutenant, use Paralactic Poison on another. By the time you use Paralactic Poison, Dazzle is probably almost off of cooldown. You can, you know, use it on somebody else. So it just gives you a lot more CC to just have an extra single target hold. So that's kind of the thought process there for Paralactic Poison. And then you have your AoE holds. So if Poison Trap is enough to hold most things, and I think I also have a chance for extra magnitude. Yeah, Lockdown is a really cool ability because it's kind of like it's built in the overpower mechanic for controllers, with a, you know, with an enhancement instead. So you would use Poison Trap, and that should pretty much hold the entire mob. It's only going to hold bosses though if the Lockdown procs on them. So if you use Poison Trap on a mob, then it's going to be on cooldown for the next mob. So for the next mob, you would then use your Pyrotechnic hold, which is explosive, and this is going to hold the next mob. So you're basically cycling between holds. You're cycling between single target holds, and then you're cycling between AoE holds. And actually, if you use either of your AoE holds, you could then follow it up with holding, you know, most mobs, a typical mob at ×8 will have 2 bosses in it. So, for example, a different rotation you might want to do, if you're trying to, you know, spread out the CC, is again, like always, you target the boss in the mob, you use Envenom, you use Weaken, then you use either Poison Trap or Explosive Bouquet, and then you're still targeting the boss in the mob, and then if you followed up with Dazzle, that will hold the boss because you've already used your AoE hold, which has targeted the boss. So you only need one more hold. You're right, it takes 2 hold powers to hold a boss in City of Heroes, unless you get the Overpower proc, then it should only take 1. And then you could follow it up, target the next boss, use Paralactic Poison on that one, and then by the time you use all of that, Envenom and Weaken are probably off a cooldown, so then you would put these on the other boss in the mob. And if you've done that, that mob is completely CC'd, they are completely debuffed, and then you're standing in the mob, they're even more debuffed. It's just like the ultimate set combination for just debuffing the mob, CCing the mob. They just can't do anything. Even if they break out of the CC, they can't hit anybody because their to hit has been completely destroyed by your debuffs. So super fun. Okay, so, and then Venomous Gas we already talked about. So that pretty much goes through everything for Poison. Let's talk a little bit about Pyrotechnic. This particular build that I made doesn't really feature all of the stuff that Pyrotechnic can do. There's a couple powers I didn't take. So we'll talk about the ones that I took first really quickly. So Dazzle, the single target hold, pretty much every controller is going to take this over the immobilize. Holds are just better. It's hard CC, so you're pretty much always going to take that. I did not take the immobilize on this one, so I'm going to skip that. Glittering column is pretty cool because this is kind of like a new thing for controllers. You put down this beam of light, it taunts the enemies. It also has a huge to hit debuff built in. So this is just like the cherry on the top for the CC. I would use this probably after you use Envenom, Weaken, and your holds. It's like if the mob is really taking a long time to die, or there's just extra mobs being pulled, you throw this down, and so most of the mob is going to be, held already, and they're going to be debuffed already. And on top of that, they're not even going to be hitting your allies, they're going to be hitting this thing because it taunts the mob. So it's just like so overkill in how much like utility that this build brings to teams. So that's what that does. I did not take the sleep. It is deep sleep, but we're not really building sleep here. We're trying to build hold, so that's why I didn't take that. This is a pretty typical AoE stun, which is generally an amazing power to take on a controller. It's just another like AoE, CC ability. I didn't take it because, again, I'm trying to stack hold on this build, so there wasn't really any need to take this. This is an ability that I would take if I didn't have access to Poison Trap in the build. Because you have Poison Trap, you don't really need to take this ability, Brilliant Barrage. You could replace, there's some things in the build. Like, for example, maybe if you don't want to stack so much hold, you might want to do replace this with, wait a minute, did I take this? No, this is the stun. Sorry, the stun is multi-purpose missiles. You might want to replace Paralactic Poison with multi-purpose missiles. That would give you more like AoE focus CC. I mean, it doesn't really matter which direction you go in. You're so overkill in the CC and debuff department. But Paralactic Poison, the reason that I think it's better is you already have so much, AoE mob control that Paralactic Poison is going to help you like hold AVs, or just hold those enemies that are really resistant to hold powers. Because if you're fighting an AV, what you would do is you would target it, you'd use Envenom, you'd use Weaken, and then I would actually, because it's an AV, it's a little bit, you might not be able to hold right away. You'd probably want to use a Glittering Column first in this case. Unless there's a whole mob up, then you might want to go straight to your other CC. But you'd have a Glittering Column out, and then once you try to hold the AV, your rotation's going to be pretty much like you're going to want your AoE ones up. So Explosive Bouquet, then you would use Poison Trap, then you use Dazzle, then you use Paralactic Poison, then you use Neurotoxic Breath, and then you go back to Dazzle. And once you have done that rotation alone, let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've used all 5 holds, and then you went back and you stacked a 6th one with Dazzle because that should be off cooldown. And by the time you do that, your Paralactic Poison is probably off of cooldown. You've now stacked 7 holds, and on top of that, I think one of these abilities makes them weaken. This ability right here, if you use on the AV, minus strength to hold. What that means is your holds are basically going to last 93% longer. Almost, they're twice as powerful, your holds, almost. Now, that being said, AVs do have a ton of debuff resistance, so this could be, reduced to maybe like 10%. But on an AV, that's still pretty huge. So these holds are like very, very powerful is what I'm trying to say here. And when you stack this many, you basically can hold anything in the game that can be held. The way that AVs work is they have those purple triangles up around them. When they have the purple triangles up, they're almost impossible to hold. You won't be able to do it on your own. Maybe if you have like another couple people who are throwing out a bunch of holds, you could do it. But when those triangles are not up on the AV, that AV will be held if you follow that rotation. So yeah, that's pretty much what the build focuses on, and that's why I took Paralactic Poison instead of the AoE stun. So other things that you can very much salt to taste with this build. I went more for, like, again, the maxing out holds and team support rather than doing a bunch of damage. So Dazzle, your single target hold, a lot of times this is the ability you'll want to proc. So you'll put, like, unbreakable constraint, chance 4 damage. You'd put an Apocalypse, chance 4 damage. You put basically like 5 chance 4 damages in this, and that kind of helps you with the single target damage department. I just put Unbreakable Constraint because I want the hold to last longer for this build. And then obviously when you do it this way, you get the set bonuses, which means you have, more recharge, more resistances, more accuracy. So that was why I made that decision. Envenom and Weaken, traditionally, you'll want to have 2 accuracies. You really don't want these abilities to miss. The only reason I have 1 is because this build is actually featuring Nerve Alpha, which I have never done before. But looking at it, I think this is a pretty cool direction to take the build. I was really looking for slots in this build, and this was one way that I was able to save a bunch, is by having Nerve, because there's a lot of abilities that you want to put accuracy in Poison. Neurotoxic Breath is another one. Most of the time you'd want to have 2 accuracies in this, but I got away with just doing 1 because of it. Glittering Column is, I don't know how important the accuracy is really going to be in this ability. So we pretty much just want to use it as much as possible. I just have 1 recharge for 13 seconds. We could potentially move like the Soulbound Allegiance and put another one in. I just don't know if that's really going to be as meaningful as just having, a slightly better pet. So that's another thing that you could kind of mess around with the build. Oh, I forgot to say, I did put an Achilles heel in Envenom. This is not required as well. It does have an okay chance to proc, but it doesn't really last for too long, so that's not super important to the build. You don't have to have the Achilles heel. I like having it in for a little bit extra debuff. Yep, everything so far is pretty standard. Elixir of Life, I like to have 2 recharge in, because I like to just be able to resurrect people a lot sooner. Again, that might be something if you wanted to get rid of the Soulbound Allegiance, you could put a recharge here and a recharge here. That's another way that you could build this. So since we're at the incendiary aura, let's talk about the 2 AoE toggles that you have. Both of them do pretty much the same thing. They're giving minus to hit and defense debuff. You do have the resistance built in, but you can't add that with enhancements. There is no resistance debuff enhancement. So the only things you can enhance for these abilities are defense debuff, to hit debuff, and end reduction. So that is why the best way to slot these is with the hammy that does exactly that. Defense debuff, to hit debuff, endurance reduction. When you slot it this way, it's as if you have 9 slots in the ability, right? Because each one of these is basically equivalent to 3 enhancements with the hammy. Since each of the things that this hammy is doing is affecting the ability, it's just so powerful. So with the enhancements, you can see it's just like through the roof, like crazy defense debuff, crazy to hit debuff, and the endurance is reduced by so much. It's just like the best way to build these abilities. And so since you have 2 of them, it's just crazy. I mean, just standing next to the target, see 15%, it's 30% minus to hit just by standing next to the target. That pretty much already caps defense. So you just can't be hit. If the targets are standing near you, you're pretty much invulnerable. Or, they have only a 5% chance to hit you, which is pretty crazy. So really great abilities. And kind of the whole reason for the this power set choice for the two of these. Okay, this is our hold. I just put in the Superior Will of the Controller, which is the better attuned set of the two. The other one doesn't have really good set bonuses. So that's why I'm taking Superior Will of the Controller. You get that range defense for the 6 set bonus, recharge, accuracy, all the good stuff. Pyrolactic Poison is a Gladiator's Net, or again, it's some pretty good stats on this for the set bonuses. Extra Hold is great. Max End is great. Damage buff is a complete waste, but that's the only one. Then we have the recharge and the defense for AoE, all really good stuff. And again, I'm just trying to beef these holds out. So you'll notice all of the holds are 6 slotted except for Neurotoxic because it doesn't take a hold. But yeah, so that's kind of the main thing for this build is I'm just, want to be able to hold anything. Catherine Wheel, this is the pet for the controller. I'm using Expedient Reinforcement. I do have the Resist aura in here because I also took a Seer with this build. You're a support build, but then if you can bring some pets to the table, you're also supporting your pets. So that was kind of the thought process there. I even put Soulbound Allegiance just to, make it super powerful. And Expedient Reinforcement, the reason we're taking that is because it's a really great set. Only 4 of them are needed to get the recharge bonus. So this is very common where some people will just take the pet just for Expedient Reinforcement for that 6% recharge. So yeah, recharge is going to be really helpful for the build. Poison Trap, we're taking the Superior Entomb for the recovery. The Fire and Cold resistance, I love the slow resistance as well. And again, it's a purple set. It's going to make the holds even better. And we have the lockdown in there, which is just for the chance for hold. We could even remove this. You could probably, I don't think I want to. And actually, I kind of want a better recharge in there. Recharge hold is good. Yeah. I think I would do that. Recharge hold. Is there a recharge? Yeah, I would do that. Okay. Venomous Gas we talked about. Acrobatics, pretty self-explanatory. You have to have knockdown protection. And it is, you are making it to 12 with Blessing of Zephyr. Dark Embrace, pretty standard. You got to have some resistances. This is how we get it. Steadfast Protection. We do have the plus maximum health for Unbreakable Guard. Dark Obliteration. This is like your only attack. It's a great one. Really good AoE attack. So you can pretty much use that on cooldown after you do all your debuffs and your holds. It's going to contribute a lot of damage to the team, and it has minus hit built in. So again, the enemies are just completely debuffed. Maneuvers is great because, again, you have all that minus hit, and then you're also giving the team a pretty good amount of defense. Almost 5% is pretty nice. So, yeah, stacks really well with what you're doing. And I am trying to go support-oriented, which is why I have the full leadership going on. Tactics is 6-slotted. You're giving, let's see, 15% to hit is great. Pretty much not going to miss anything. Just really good support ability to have. This is something that you may not want to take on this build. You would save so many slots if you didn't take leadership. If you want to go a different path, I really like taking Teleport Target for poison because it can be really nice to, like, get people to missions and just in general help people out because you want the team together. You want everybody, attacking the mob at the same time that you're debuffing, because it makes what you're doing so much better if the team is together and doing the same thing, which is why I like to have it. Keeps people together better. And the other thing is it can be nice to, if things are really going south, you can get out of the room. You can, if people are dead, you can teleport them to you and res them, which is really nice. So that's a different way you could go with it. And it gives you more options to take other things. You could then take another, CC ability with multi-purpose missiles. I don't think there's really any point to take the Immobilize because you have so much hard CC that, like, why does it matter if they're not moving? They can't move already because you're holding them. So, but multi-purpose missiles would be probably what I would take. There's probably some other things you could take in the power pools. Dark consumption would actually be pretty huge. That would be the other way I would build this. Let me save this before I do this. Okay, so that's the build. But if you didn't want to do it this way, you could do something like, we'll put it here, teleport target, and then this could be dark consumption, and then that could be multi-purpose missiles. You wouldn't need all these slots in dark consumption. You'd only need like, well, yeah, 1 accuracy and maybe 2 recharge. So you got 3 slots to play with. That could give you some more recharge there. Multi-purpose missiles, you would put like, you'd put this would actually be great. You could put absolute amazement in the full set. Teleport target, you could take slow resistance, which is great. And you still have another slot, so you could get like, it would actually be really helpful to have a miracle, because you don't really have much self-healing, or sorry, regenerative tissue, I mean. So, this could just be a different way to build it. The advantages to this is you do have dark consumption, which is really nice. There are going to be some endurance issues with this build. Well, actually, they just went way down. Why is that? Oh, because we don't have leadership. So this is going to really help the endurance department. You may be able to, if you go this route, you may. I don't think so. I think you're still going to want ageless either way, but it's going to make the endurance department even better. But then you're not going to have that team support with leadership, which is really nice. You do have teleport target, which is really cool. And then you would get the 6 set bonus from absolute amazement. You get the stun. It's this is kind of what I'm talking about. There's pros and cons here. It's a totally different thing going on. It's just kind of up to you what you want to do with the build. So that pretty much covers everything I want to talk about for poison. Like I said, and there's just so many different ways you could go about it. Like you could not take toxic breath. You could not take paralactic poison, and maybe that's how we fit our leadership in. I would take the heal for this build. You don't have to take antidote, and then you could take tactics, and that's that. There's just so many different ways that you might want to build it. But yeah, the one that I came up with is, we'll discard this one. This is the one that I would probably do for this build, and just go full team support. But yeah, lots of different ways to build it. Hopefully this was helpful to you.